All right, hello everyone. I am Howard Winchester, Communications Manager at Learning Heroes. Welcome to our Support Learning at Home webinar brought to you by Learning Heroes and GreatSchools.org. I would first like to thank you all for attending today's webinar, as I'm sure you're all working tirelessly to address the new reality that we all face, whether it's parents, educators, or community leaders. Learning Heroes and GreatSchools.org have partnered for many years, and we've joined forces recently to provide you with actionable and research-based bilingual resources to support parents and families at this important time. You'll hear from a variety of subject matter experts and an array of resources you can share in your networks and use in your communities. Aside from myself, presenters today include David Park, Senior Vice President of Strategy and Communications at Learning Heroes, Wendy Lopez Aflito, Vice President of Content and Partnerships at Learning Heroes, Carol Lloyd, VP Editorial Design, Director, for GreatSchools.org, and Carlin Laraway, Director of Idaho State Department of Education, Director of Assessment and Accountability, Idaho State Department of Education. Participants will be muted throughout the webinar, but please utilize the question box to write down the question you may have, and it will be answered during the Q&A portion. This webinar will be recorded and shared to all attendees and registrants in a follow-up email as well. Without further ado, here's David Park, Senior Vice President of Strategy and Communications at Learning Heroes.
Thank you, Howard. I am David Park from Learning Heroes, and for those of you who aren't familiar with Learning Heroes, we're a nonprofit organization that focuses on helping parents better support their child's social, emotional, and academic development. And I can honestly say, in many years of work in communications and education and youth development, that there has really never been a more important time for educators and education leaders and education agencies and community organizations and families and parents and students to work together as there is at this moment. So I was very happy to see such a diverse group of people register for this webinar. We're excited that there are representatives of school districts on the line. There are state education agencies. There are PTAs and many other nonprofit organizations that serve parents, students, and families. And we're so glad you're here. I know these are crazy times, so really appreciate your joining us on this webinar. I am attempting, there we go. So Learning Heroes has always believed that in order to best serve parents, we first need to listen to parents. And so we do a significant amount of qualitative and quantitative research, and have for the last 5 years. And so we do this research among parents and guardians, and you can find it all at our website at bealearninghero.org. So our surveys are all conducted in English and Spanish, and we do oversamples with African American parents and Hispanic parents so that more reliable data can be reported across subgroups. Our surveys, although we do a ton of data and have a ton of data, I'm just going to walk through a few slides for you this afternoon that can give you a snapshot of how parents and guardians view their child's education. And since we have done research for the last 4 years, actually 5 years, we have longitudinal data. And so we're actually now able to look at trends data among parents to better understand parents' mindsets about education. So first, I'd like to talk a little bit about perception and reality, and I'm really pleased to say that there are a number of people on this webinar today who could probably talk to this slide as well or better than I can. But we have found in 4 years of research that 90% of parents, and this is regardless of race, income, and education level, believe that their child is at or above grade level in reading and math. So 9 out of 10 parents think that their child is at or above grade level, when most of us on the phone know the reality is far from that. According to NAEP, 37% of students nationally perform at or above grade level. And according to Scholastic's principal and teacher survey, less than 40% of teachers report their students come prepared for grade level work at the beginning of the year. So I mentioned earlier that we now have trends data, and that we see that this 90% of parents who believe that their child is at or above grade level really isn't budging. What we've also found is that more parents now actually think that their child is above grade level than they did a few years ago. So if anything, it's kind of heading in the wrong direction. And from this slide, you'll see that parents have increased confidence. So you look at the percentage of parents who are confident that their child will be prepared for college. In 2017, we see it 60%, and in 2019, we see it 66%. So that's rising in terms of confidence that their child will be prepared for a 2 or 4 year college degree. And then that we have the breakdown also below in terms of African American parents, Hispanic parents, and white parents. So not only do they have confidence that their child will be prepared for college, they also think that their child will earn a degree. So there's a lot of optimism when it comes to post-secondary success. So overall, in 2017, we saw that 3/4 of all parents and guardians, 75%, believe that their child would earn a degree, and a staggering 78% thought that their child would earn a degree in 2019. And again, looking at the different demographic data that we have with African American parents in 2019, 84% think that their child will get a 2 or 4 year college degree, 85% of Hispanic parents, and nearly 3/4 of all white parents. So there is some good news. A little information goes a long way. Remember the 90%. Well, in math, it's 88% of parents who thought their child was at or above grade level in math. But when we give parents, and through our research, we gave parents some information that's readily available. So say your child receives a B in math and doesn't meet the expectations on the state test. That 88% actually goes to 61%. And then taking it a step further, if your child's school receives an overall performance rating of C, that 61% goes to 52%. So just a little bit of information that's readily available can help parents have a better understanding of their child's progress and achievement. The other piece of good news, and I would say that especially now as schools are closing and parents need help navigating their child's education, parents are very receptive to resources. So here you see the percentage of K through 12 parents who say these kinds of resources would be extremely helpful. 77%, just a simple explanation of what their child is expected to learn this year. 70% of parents said a simple way to determine whether their child is ready for the current grade or the next grade would be helpful. And 69% said a tool that helps you and the teacher and the child reflect on your grade level progress and helps you create an action plan for the year would be helpful. And so again, in this important time, I would think that this would even be a greater demand for parents. And I would also say, you know, when I think about the disconnect that I mentioned before, the 90% disconnect, and in context of what's going on right now with COVID-19 and school closures, you know, I believe that parents and guardians will be more connected with their child's learning. I'll never forget one time I was speaking to a mom in Boston, and she mentioned that she noticed at home that her second grader and her fourth grader were reading at the same grade level, and that was the first time that she realized that her daughter may be having an issue with reading. And so I think as more parents are navigating learning at home, they may be much more connected with their child's learning. So with that, I am going to turn it over to my colleague, Wendy Lopez Afflito, who is going to walk us through some of Learning Heroes research-based communications.
Thanks, David. Thanks so much. And so hopefully my slides will advance here. Thank you all so much for joining today. I want to build on what David was saying. So we start everything that we do by first listening to parents deeply. And so based on the 5 years of research, only when we see gaps in resources is when we really develop new content. And when we see a need to sort of curate that, we work with great partners like Great Schools and Scholastic and Univision and many others to sort of pull that together. And so what we have done is updated our Learning Hero roadmap to really include new resources relevant to this moment in time. So the Learning Hero roadmap is an interactive guide for K-8 parents, really focusing on the life skills that we have heard matter most to parents. So starting with, what do grade level skills in math and reading look like? Literally, what do they look like? So connecting to videos and information that gives them that sort of foundation, and then also gives them the resources to support those skills at home. In addition to academics, the roadmap really focuses also on life skills, right? The social and emotional aspects. And so, with more time at home, it's a good opportunity for parents to really check in on how children are feeling, lean into their strengths and areas for growth. And so we have some really practical parent-friendly tools around, things like growth mindset and leaning into a child's strengths, as I mentioned. There are also tools around communicating with your child's teacher, which we're going to be updating. We have some example schedules for home learning, which we'll be updating as well. And we'll be continually sort of working with partners to update this roadmap. One of the first steps on the roadmap is called, I'm sorry, if you can go back. Is that me? Did I do that? To the readiness check. All right, one of the first steps on the roadmap is the readiness check. It is meant to be a gut check for parents. It's like all of our tools, mobile friendly. All of our tools are also in English and Spanish. I think this could be really a helpful tool for parents in this moment. Again, as schools are figuring out their digital plans, it could also be a great supplement for teachers to send out to parents. Basically, the child answers 3 to 5 short questions, kind of like a game, around math and reading, and it gives parents a sense of how their child is progressing with foundational grade level skills. And then I think the most relevant part is that at the end, parents then get connected to highly curated, skill specific, so really drilling down even beyond grade level, but skill specific resources, videos, activities that help the child both learn and practice the skill, right? So we've heard from parents that homework help is challenging, right? So for those parents who might be multitasking like me, working, there are videos to help sort of guide children through those skills and then gives them opportunity to practice. The readiness check, again, is all about those end of year foundational skills. So as parents are using it, they can have their child take last year's grade level, again, to refresh and see how they're doing on those skills and then build from there. In addition to the readiness check, we have created a one-pager that can be both printed and sent home in packages that schools are getting ready to send out, or it's also digital. And basically what we've been hearing is, parents are a little overwhelmed with all the information sort of coming at them. So we tried to put in sort of a really concrete, actionable, sort of bite-sized bits of information to help parents through this time. It's sort of the basics, right? So I talked a little bit about focusing on those key skills, using tools like the readiness check to make sure that you're getting in at least a little bit of time on the core academic pieces that are and looking at grade level resources for that. Moving on to the importance of keeping a routine. We're connecting folks to some sample schedules, but we also want to really communicate to parents that as they're creating those routines, to have fun with it, and to also, it has to meet your family's needs. So I know with my own family, we've been experimenting with different, 20-minute blocks, 30-minute blocks, just sort of being a little bit flexible, and having, it's an opportunity for your child to have some ownership around it. So I know my little kindergartner is now writing the schedule every morning. She's using the same terms that they use in school, morning circle. It might look a little different, but keeping a sense of normalcy and routine, we know, is so important for children, especially young children. And then a couple of other just really, basics is, the importance of turning off the news and taking the time to check in with how your child is feeling. I know for me and my household, we had the news on the first 2 days, and now we're really being mindful, even for our own sort of mental health, to check in once or twice, but to not let the news sort of consume us. And I know my daughter yesterday asked, like, well, are we gonna go back to school? And that for me was a flag that, like, I need to sit down and really talk about what this means. It's even the concept of time, a couple of days for young children, is really abstract. So checking in, asking them how they're feeling. If they're not prepared to put it into words, asking them to draw about it or write about it. And then lastly, the last two sort of, tips or actions that we're, sharing with parents is, the importance of staying connected right now. I know we're overwhelmed, and I know I'm getting lots of emails, but staying connected to friends, to, peers. I think the parent-to-parent information sharing is so important. I know our school isn't up and running yet, so we're going to experiment with a group of my daughter's friends and doing a morning circle Zoom this Friday morning, sharing ideas, sharing resources. That support system is going to be so important, and we have so much to share in terms of our own experiences as well. And then finally is really sharing with families, like, we know we're stressed. We all are. It is overwhelming, but taking a moment to really enjoy some family time can also be really meaningful learning moments. So I know last night it was only 20 minutes, but we played Uno as a family. There's so many math games that can be done with a simple deck of cards. Things like maybe looking at old family photos and writing a story about it, or I know my girls are missing abuela. I think tonight we're going to sit down and try and write her a little letter, and we'll figure out when we can, go mail it to her. But enjoying those quality moments that, again, just can be so powerful. And then lastly, all of our resources are always designed to be embedded within what districts, schools, organizations might be doing anyway. So these are all designed to be shared digitally, whether that be via online portals, websites, the digital packages that schools are putting together. The tips that I just shared on the flyer can be pulled out and used as texts. As part of newsletters, as part of social media. We are also sharing this all out via our social media at Twitter and Facebook at bealearninghero.org. I know some schools are doing print packets, which is so critical since so many of our families may not have a computer at home or Wi-Fi. I mean, all of our tools are mobile friendly, but that print aspect of all of this is going to be really critical. And we're going to be sort of keeping our eyes and ears, really open and hearing feedback from partners as to what's needed and how we can help. So those are just some ideas, and we're eager to hear feedback in terms of, again, what folks are hearing and needing. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Howard.
Awesome, thank you so much, Wendy. And as Wendy mentioned, Learning Heroes has a number of digital and online resources for families and educators to use in your in-home lesson plans. As part of our mission to help parents and families, we'll share these resources across our social media platforms to reach as many individuals as possible. We also plan to share our partner resources like Digital Promise and GreatSchools.org. We'll also be circulating a weekly digest of all of the resources we've shared in a wrap-up style email sent out every Friday to our subscription list. So after this webinar, we'll send this recording as well as this PowerPoint presentation in an email to you, and in that email you'll get a subscription link if you want to sign up for the weekly digest. This is just one of the many ways Learning Heroes will help educators, parents, and communities support learning at home. I'd now like to introduce Carol Lloyd, VP Editorial Director for GreatSchools.org, here to share some of the awesome things that they're doing to help families.
Hi, thanks, Harold. And I'm so glad to be here and to share these resources with you. Great Schools is a nonprofit that's been serving parents with information to support their children's learning at home for the last 20 years. And we have thousands and thousands of grade-based resources from pre-K through 12th grade. So we've been, the last 2 decades, we've been sort of priming the pump to be ready to support a moment like this. All our content is evidence-based. It's all mobile first. It's all free, and it's in Spanish and as well as English. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about where we're starting now and the guidance that we're giving parents. Let's see, I'm forwarding. Let's see, is that working? Oh, that worked. Great. So zooming back, and we've heard some really awesome tips from Wendy. We created an article about how to support your child during school closure. And I wanted to go over very briefly the set of guidelines that we're proposing, which is for parents to create a daily routine or schedule, to establish a calm workspace, to set goals. You could set daily goals ahead for a whole week, or you could do it daily. It depends on the child, depends on the family, depends on whether the parent has time to do that every day. To give children the message that they want to tackle the toughest lessons first. So maybe establish that in the morning, academics, in the afternoon, more enrichment activities. To work in and build in breaks. Because a lot of parents don't understand. They think their kids go off to school for 6 hours a day, and they don't actually understand that a lot of kids all the way through elementary school can't focus for more than 20, 25 minutes at a time. So they need organized breaks. That you give them time to get some fresh air. And I know that is difficult in many places here and in many cities, but that's really important to get outside if you can. And then finally, to make space for feelings and I want to add, and for fun. This is a time when everybody is stressed. We're all dealing with a lot more than we ever thought we could. And yet family time is precious. And so it's really important to sort of hunker down and give each other the love that we need. And that means talking about feelings. That sometimes means playing a game. That means relating to your kids on their level. I started a TikTok channel with my daughter because, you know, she's a teenager. So that's how we relate. We've been serenading outside our house, playing music or singing at 6 p.m. every day, and that's a sort of a tradition that started in Italy recently since COVID-19. So trying to find some rituals and traditions that feel meaningful to you. And I wanted to highlight 2 other sources of really amazing general parenting advice. Prepared Parents is a new organization that is offering parents information about how to support their children's learning in a sort of broad, not grade-based, but in a sort of a broad guidance for supporting learning. And I've seen some really great content coming out of their site since COVID-19 began. And understood.org is the foundational organization for figuring out how to support your child's learning with learning and attention issues. So they have some wonderful content since coronavirus began, and their resources are really useful and applicable to all kids as well. I want to talk a little bit about, sorry, I'm pausing because I'm trying to forward. Here we go. There we go. Thanks. So we created a coronavirus support page. It's a school guide, it's a guide for learning during school closures, and it's in Spanish and English. And on this page, there are grade-based toolkits. So, and from preschool through 12th grade. So for instance, there are worksheets, book lists, very tactical things that you can do. They're not generalized articles. They're free resources that are grade level for your child. And many of them are aligned to Common Core standards. And so they've been validated by external educators and experts. I just want to go into a little bit more depth about what great schools, grade-based resources are. We have worksheets. This is reading, writing, math, and science from preschool through 6th grade. We have vocabulary word lists by grade. We have a wonderful collection of milestones videos which show what your child should be learning in reading, writing, and math. In English and in Spanish, so you can sort of see, well, I wonder if my child's on track for math. And you can look and watch 3-4 2-minute videos in math, about math for 3rd graders, and you'll have a much better sense of what kids are expected to know at that age. We also have weekly grade-based newsletters, and these run all year round, from kindergarten through 12th grade. So that's a good long-term solution if you want to continue to get sort of a drip of new content that is grade-based for your child. We also sometimes sign up entire districts of parents to these newsletters, and so that is also a possibility. If any of you all are out there and would like to sign up a group of parents, we have done that in the past, and that's been very successful to opt a group of parents into the newsletters. We also have grade-based book lists in a large array of topics, and we have a huge amount of social emotional learning content. Parenting Cue Cards is an interactive mobile tool that you can just use for tough parenting situations. And we have a rich collection of content on all sorts of issues, which is our Emotional Smarts Toolbox, which we'll send you links to as well. We could forward. I'm still not getting it. All right, this is great. So this is an example of our worksheets. We have small collections of worksheets about very specific topics, but we also have a worksheet gallery, which you can filter by grade and by subject. And there are about 1,500 worksheets that you can go searching for very specific things from pre-K through 6th grade. I'm forwarding, sorry guys. This is an example of our grade-based newsletters. Sorry, guys. Here's an example of our grade-based newsletters. They are in Spanish and English. And as I said before, they run all year round from kindergarten through 12th grade. And so for thinking about this moment in the next few weeks, as many schools are closed, that's one thing, but how do you engage parents for the long haul and catch them up over the summer, for instance? This is a really good tool. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about, sorry. All right, some grade-based resources from various partners around the web. Learning Heroes has described their readiness check, which is also a great beginning point to start the process of finding grade-based resources. Khan Academy has awesome resources, particularly in the math and the sciences that are grade-based, and they have a sort of a guide for how to use Khan Academy during school closures that has just come out. They also have some wonderful grade-based learning schedules, like daily planners that they've created for this situation. Great places to find books and media. Scholastic, Common Sense Media is coming out with a list of digital resources for this moment for homeschooling. And Colorín Colorado is the Spanish side of Reading Rockets, and they have some wonderful Spanish language resources, and they have gone beyond Spanish, which is amazing. They have grade-based reading tip sheets in 13 languages that would be really wonderful for districts who are trying to find ways to support non-English and non-Spanish speaking parents. Greater Good Science Center is an incredible source of center for pro-social science in the country, and in particular, they do a huge amount of teacher training, but they have just launched their parent site. So they have wonderful materials on parenting and self-compassion, and parenting and character, and parenting with social emotional learning. So they would be a great source of information on that. Finally, I've mentioned Understood before. For learning and attention issues, this is definitely the place you want to go to find resources to support parents who have children with special challenges. And that's it. Thank you so much, and I look forward to hearing from you. If you have ideas for resources that you think we should create or something that you want to share, please reach out. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Carol. And now we are going to have our Q&A round. So if there are any questions that you may have that you want to ask anyone on the panel, now is the time you can write those questions in the questions box, and we'll be sure to read them aloud so that our panel can answer those questions. And I believe David, he's going to facilitate and moderate the questions.
Sorry about that, I could not get off mute. But so we do have a question from Kelly Gibson, who says, I am trying to find a way to keep my 13-year-old daughter up in her schoolwork when they have no school. She's also in special ed. Is there stuff for them to work on that she can get credit for? Carol, is that something that you can answer? I know that.
Well, depending on depending on your child's grade, I would definitely go into Great Schools and sign up for our grade-based newsletter, so you can start to get. We'll just start feeding you a regular sort of stream of resources, and then as a place to start, I would go to Khan Academy. I think for some schools have used Khan Academy only as supplemental, but there are some schools that use it as a fundamental source of as a fundamental source of curriculum. So the other thing that you should make sure you're doing is continue to check back with your district and to check back with your school, because they should be rolling out learning resources over time. You know, you want to be, as soon as those are available, you want to have access to those.
Great, thank you, Carol. There was a question about
Wendy,
both
do you want to add anything?
Wendy, did you want to add to that at all? All right, I'm gonna go forward, and then if Wendy may add later on.
I was muted. Sorry, guys. I was muted. Yeah, I was just going to add, and I don't know if you mentioned this earlier, Cal, but another resource is understood.org. In terms of kids with special needs and additional, you know, sort of more background information for parents too, but couldn't agree more in terms of just staying in touch with the district. I know a lot of schools are starting to get their packets. I know my district, we'll be able to pick up our packets tomorrow. So yeah, just really, you know, and staying connected with your peers as to what you're hearing in terms of that support from your district.
Great, thank you, Wendy. And Wendy, another one I think you can start with, and others can jump in on. But someone asked a question about resources for families that do not have laptops and tablets, and I think this is really important because a lot of families are in that situation or don't have internet access. So the question is, do we have any districts or partners donating these resources?
Yeah, that is such an important question, and one that we've been talking a lot about and hearing from partners. So a couple of things. One is, you know, the tools that we mentioned, Readiness Check, Learning Hero Roadmap, all of those were built on mobile first, which means that you can access them on your phone, even if you don't have Wi-Fi or a computer. The other thing to note is, you know, this is where I think, you know, parents are resourceful. We know our children leaning into their interests and being creative. You know, I only mentioned a couple of ideas, but, you know, Carol talked about, what are some of your family's traditions, whether it's cooking, there's math, there's reading you can be doing. There are those sort of everyday learning moments that I think now is the time that we can all sort of lean into. And then finally, again, just staying connected with your districts regarding their plans for providing printed material, to help you with grade level learning.
And I would just add quickly to that I think it's important also for parents to check with the teacher at this time to better understand what grade level their child is reading on or doing math in, so that they will know what level of resources to pull for that child. Another question we have here, we have several. What about for parents who may not really have the academic skills to assist? What are resources or guides that can help them?
Yeah, it's a really great question, and happy to start, and then Carol, feel free to, and others. So that was where earlier when I was talking about when we built the Readiness Check, we did a lot of user testing with parents. We've leaned into our own data. We know that for many parents, I know myself included, like after a certain level, like math gets intimidating to teach. And so on the readiness, for example, when you take the 3 to 5, your child answers the 3 to 5 questions, you get directed to a real balance of what we call learn and practice resources. So meaning, and a lot of them are curated from trusted organizations like Khan Academy has great videos that show that skill so that the parent doesn't need to stress or feel intimidated by having to suddenly become the teacher, which is really overwhelming. And so the resources that we connect parents to are chosen with a lot of intentionality exactly for that question. Another resource that we haven't mentioned that we also connect to is Zern Math. They have, in response to this, opened up their platform and waived the fee. So all parents have to do is register to the account, and you get access. And Zearn Math is K through 5, and they also have really great fun videos to explain some of the concepts and skills, and along with practice exercises for students.
Thank you, Wendy. Are there any additions to that? Okay.
Yeah, sorry, this is Carol. There's a lot of huge amount of rich learning on YouTube. There are incredible science teachers who do incredible chemistry experiments. There are incredible math teachers teaching every possible skill. So really researching sources for that where you can find some of the world-class teachers who are also passionate YouTubers, and find that topic and find a great channel that's a good match for your child's level and also their interests. There are also teachers who are passionate about reading to children. And if you are so exhausted one night and you need your child to be read 4 books to, and you cannot do it because Lord knows sometimes we can't do everything, that's one thing. You can find someone to read your child's favorite book to them.
Yeah, just if I could just add one other quick idea that you just made me think of, so couldn't agree more. And as we were talking about parents being tired, you know, I think this is a moment where absolutely it's important to check in and know and sort of get a sense of where your child is, and that's where Readiness Check and other tools can help in terms of grade level. But also this is a moment to make sure that we're role modeling and communicating the fun of learning, right? So it's really important. So for example, if you have a book that is engaging and perhaps a stretch text that is above your child's reading level, reading to your child in whatever your native language is critically important. In addition to the YouTube examples that Carol shared, there are amazing read alouds by celebrities happening. I know Save the Children just launched a whole new campaign in response to this, with lots of celebrities reading their favorite books. Storyline Online is a great resource. I think they were having some technical difficulties today, but it's a great resource. We connect to that one as well, that also has celebrities reading books online. I've seen some really great ones in Spanish as well. So again, I think this is a moment to not overstress ourselves and really, you know, find ways to make it engaging as well for our kids.
Thank you, Wendy. We've got a comment from
one
Paul
more.
Back. Oh yeah, go ahead, Carol.
Oh, sorry. Just one more idea is that there is such a rich resource of really educational podcasts for kids out there right now. PRX has started a sort of a network of children's podcasts called TRAX, TRAX, and there's incredible science podcasts, and there's also stuff in Spanish. There's for Spanish learners, like if your high schooler is trying to learn Spanish, then they might listen to news in slow Spanish. So there's a really rich resource out there, and that's all on smartphones. So you don't need internet connection. You don't need a laptop for that.
Great, thank you. So Paul Roback writes, the 3 PBS TV stations in the greater Los Angeles areas are partnering with LA Unified on an at-home learning initiative. This way parents can watch and learn along with their kids. This is a great idea. And I couldn't agree more. We've been in touch with PBS and we work with WNET in New York and New Jersey. But I think that this is really innovative, and PBS, especially because of the connection that they already have with parents and families, is a perfect outlet for that. But thanks for that comment. Another question, anxiety is a big issue nowadays among kids. If this is heightened when parents find out their child is not performing at the level they assumed, are there any resources to help parents handle this reality so they don't end up consequating their child? Wendy, I don't know if you're able to answer that one. I think it's about resources that parents can use just to make sure that their child is okay, when they get kind of the news that they may not be on grade level, if I'm understanding that question correctly.
Yeah, sorry, I was having, like, my laptop froze for a moment there. Yeah, so this is for us at Learning Heroes, we're really focused on sort of helping parents have a more accurate sense of how their child is progressing. And the unfortunate truth is that a lot of our students aren't at grade level. That child and that family is not alone. And I think this is a moment where we can take a step back, and if we can try and look at sort of the glass half full in this moment, once we all sort of get out of the shock of this week, one good thing that might come of this is as parents, I know I'm seeing it already with my kindergartner in terms of her reading, just have a sense of what our kids really need. And if they're not at grade level, not to stress about it and not to communicate it in a way that is negative to that child. Rather, let's work on this together. What are your strengths? What can we, lean into? What interests you? And let's find some books online, or like you said, some podcasts, and really engage our child in learning. And from there, again, continue the communication with our child's teacher in terms of, grade level, what is appropriate for their child, and take it from there. I think it really is about the sort of the framing, and we don't want to shut down learning. We don't want to shut down that curiosity for learning, especially in these uncertain times.
So another question, kind of back to districts and the needs of districts at this important time. Will you be getting these resources out to school districts and/or state education departments? And if so, how? Clearly, districts have already have resource lists for parents. Just wondering if you're planning to reach out to them anyway. Carol, do you want to start with that based on Great Schools connections to districts?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. I don't think we have a finalized plan by any means, but we have talked about reaching out and communicating directly with all the schools that where we have data available on their school leaders. I think it's hard to say. I think in some states it's very state level, and there's a lot of state level decision making going on, and in other places I think it's district level, and some places it's very school level. So at this point I'm not completely clear on the best way to reach schools. We are very open to hearing people's ideas, and we're very interested in reaching out and making sure all these free resources are available to parents.
Thank you. Another question, I'm concerned about reaching families in our district who are not English proficient. Any tips on getting them on the radar? Wendy, do you want to start with that?
Yeah, such an important question. So all of our resources are in English and Spanish, and we're going to be working with our partners like Univision, reaching out to partners like Unidos US and others who reach Latino families. Certainly, though, we know that there is such a need for so many other languages. Like Carol mentioned, Colorín Colorado is a great resource. They've added a lot more languages. And more and more we're seeing that. I think this is an area where in communicating with your district is really important, since district-based communications, or school level, sometimes do have that capacity to provide resources in the languages in their community. But there is a long way to go, and we know that because we are all hearing it and seeing it even beyond, before this situation. So I would say some of the resources that we mentioned today could be a starting point.
Carol or Pascal, do you want to add to that based on the significant work that you do and with partners in different languages?
Yeah, just one thing, another completely different tool, which we really haven't talked about, texting tools, but Ready for K, which is more early learning and is in English and in Spanish, is a texting tool that is curriculum aligned and has incredible impact. And they usually cost money, but for now they're not charging. So for a district or school that wants to sign up, I think even as a single parent, you can sign up as well. So this might be an opportunity for a district or a school that really is trying to reach those families with evidence-based texts in multiple languages. This would be a time to do it. It's called Ready4 with the number 4k.org, and it's based out of a research center that started at Stanford University.
This is
Great.
Pascal with Great Schools.
Go ahead, Pascal.
I couldn't agree more with Wendy that we still have a long way to go. We have over 40 million people, Americans, that speak Spanish at home. And so we definitely need to fill that gap. And I urge everyone on the line now, if you are a district, if you are an organization, to do that. And so there are organizations, though, that are currently, they have resources in Spanish and English, and they are definitely trying to translate everything as fast as possible, but it's accurate as well. And some organizations that come to mind are For Latino, Common Sense Media Latino, Scholastics also has resources in Spanish. Great Schools has everything in Spanish as well as in English. Colorín Colorado, also part of Reading Rockets and WETA. So there are definitely organizations out there. Work within your district as well. The more parents that go to the district and ask for things in language, they'll see the need, and that gap will be filled. But we have a long way to go.
Yeah, one other resource that we haven't talked about, and they're a great partner of ours, is WNET. They have some really great parenting minute videos that are in English and Spanish that cover topics that parents care most about. They do a great job of surveying and really being responsive to what parents need. So everything from maintaining a routine, which in this, they have a great video and it gives concrete examples and it could be helpful in this moment. They have some new videos which we just launched and partner with them on developing life skills. And they, in addition to the videos, they have sort of follow-up activities and tip cards. You know, I think WNET and PBS as well have really great, we haven't talked that much about sort of the younger kids. I know I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. I'm trying to figure out, you know, what each of them, giving them each what they need, but PBS has some great, you know, so obviously sort of the 0 to 5 and pre-K content.
So a lot of people are asking if we would be able to put together a list of all these resources. I know it seems kind of overwhelming. We've mentioned so many different great tools and resources for parents, and we certainly will. In the follow-up to this, we can consolidate all of the recommendations that you're hearing, and we'll send that to you so that you can share that with your networks. I know that there are a lot of lists of great resources out there, but we'll make sure that you have one based on all the resources that have been mentioned on this webinar today. So thanks for asking about that. We also got a question, are there thoughts that Learning Heroes will extend their resources and guides to pre-K level? And so just recently, with the help of the support of the Bar Foundation, we were able to do kind of high school work, but we're really kind of focused on primarily on the K through 8 space. And we will hopefully, you know, eventually kind of expand that so that we're doing both more work, you know, in high school and potentially in pre-K as well. But right now it's primarily focused on K-8. Wendy, I don't know if you can suggest some resources for pre-K level.
Yeah, that's really great. And as we're pulling together some of the resources that Howard mentioned in the sort of weekly email and hearing from folks, you know, certainly we have partners who have great content, like I mentioned, PBS, and they have a great texting campaign. Bezos Foundation has a great app called Vroom, which is really great for that age. So we can start to share some of those out because there's a lot of great resources for sort of the pre-K. And I think, you know, also in that, because I know I have a little one at home, sort of those everyday moments, doing chores, sorting through socks, recognizing patterns. There's lots that we can do sort of as we're going through our routines as busy parents for that, and also connecting with them, because I know there's only so much that my 2.5-year-olds can do on a screen on her own. What they really want at that age and need, especially in this moment, is human interaction. So trying to find those learning moments. And that's what some of these apps give you, sort of those everyday tips. I also wanted to, I don't know if we have any questions on this, but I did want to, we talked a little bit about sort of district plans, but as districts are putting together those systems, wanted to mention 2 partners that have really great distance learning supports for educators. So Edmodo just put out a really great distance learning toolkit. Digital Promise also has put out a great toolkit, and will be putting out more. So any educators on the line and state leaders who are looking for platforms to support that communication from school to home, wanted to mention those.
Thank you, Wendy. And given we only have a couple of minutes left, so a couple of comments from folks on the webinar. One recommendation, check the local library. Great suggestion. Here our local library is closed, but you can access online books and tutoring help for anyone who has a card issued to them. That's a great suggestion. And then another person says, I've also been suggesting aboundparenting.com to parents. It's a literacy app for parents. So that's Abound, A-B-O-U-N-D, parenting.com. So those are a couple of suggestions from people on the line. We have a couple of minutes left. If there are any additional questions, looks like there is one.
Sorry, I wanted to say.
Oh, yeah.
Dave. Yeah, I just wanted to say Great Schools has a really lovely collection of early learning content that is focused on reading and writing, social, emotional, and some great math content. So we have worksheets, but also we have just some really nice they're articles, but they're really tactical articles, give you lots of ideas as to what you can do with your child to support their learning.
Thank you, Carol. And again, that's all on greatschools.org. Okay, so all right. I think there's one other question. I'll say I work with Latino students, primarily Spanish speaking, and any resources that provide lessons and at-home teachings in Spanish would be wonderful, so that we can share with our students and their families. Thank you. So great. And I think in the follow-up, there will be a lot of resources that we provide and access to resources in Spanish.
Yeah, and so the Learning Hero roadmap that I mentioned, we're constantly curating that for, the Spanish URL is rutaalfuturo.org. If you go to our Be a Learning Hero, you can toggle to the Spanish on the roadmap. And most of the resources that we link to are in Spanish, and continuously working to update those. So yeah, really critical.
Great. All right, we are out of time. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. We will follow up with the recording of this webinar so that you can watch it again or share it with people, as well as a list of resources and other materials for you. But really appreciate your time and attention today, and stay safe. And we really appreciate your being with us. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.